Okay, this one is actually based on a graphic novel by Matt Nolan's called The Killer that kind of gives us a glimpse into the motivations and inner thoughts of assassins, of all things. And the killer, who actually is never named, but is played by Michael Fassbender, is on assignment in Paris. And while he's there, he's kind of sharing his thoughts on maintaining his success as a hired assassin, his methodical and unemotional methods, and how he actually has a perfect record until this whole incident there in Paris where he misses his mark. And so as he goes back home, he realizes that most of the people that he really cares about all of a sudden are in threat. And so he has to go on kind of an assignment to try and kind of stop the fact that he is actually now the target.
Mm.
And so it's a fascinating excursion as he kind of moves from being the one that targets others, and now he is the target himself. So can't wait to kind of hear what your thoughts are, because I don't know, I really love this movie, but I'm also, the director David Fincher is probably one of my favorites. But I'll let you start, Laura. What did you think of The Killer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. David Fincher does incredible work, and his precision, I think, with this movie is what really stood out to me, especially
Right.
for Michael Fassbender's character. There's something so detailed and very immaculate about the way he approaches
Oh,
his craft, if you want to
I
call
like
it
that
that.
word,
So
immaculate.
I really, well, yeah, it kind of came across that way, just the details that he focuses on in how he does things. But you also get, like, yes, they're representing those characteristics through the lens of somebody who is a hired assassin, but there's also a level of a certain type of psychology, I suppose, that makes me think of, right? Like the meticulous individuals and those that need this sense of control. And even in the way he describes his motivations, his lack of belief about there being a sense of justice, his lack of
Right.
belief about there being any sense of why and reason to kind of what we do, and then how that is dealt with and in some ways unraveled a little bit over the course of the movie. I really enjoyed that aspect of this story.
Yeah, I think that this also is one of those films that where you have kind of the perfect content with the perfect director and the perfect lead actor. Because Michael Fassbender's kind of he hasn't been around much since kind of the whole X-Men series came to a conclusion. And so to kind of see him back, but how his style, because if you really think about this role, he doesn't talk a lot on
Mm.
screen. He's actually, most of the times that you're just kind of hearing his thoughts. And so there's a narrative kind of going on within it. But yet how he's able to convey this emotion and intensity and kind of desire or kind of direction that he's going as this assassin, and also protecting those that he loves in a certain way, was
Mm.
fascinating. So I thought it was this great combination of those behind the scenes and also those in front of the camera to really being just an amazing film. He does say in his kind of narrative within his head, the Michael Fassbender or the killer's character,
Yeah.
there is no justice in the world.
Mm.
That really this world has no justice whatsoever. And I found that compelling because I think it was a way for him to excuse why he did what he did. They're kind
Yeah.
of taking away the morality. But I don't know what your thoughts are, because did the film kind of disprove that mentality after a while? What do you think?
Well, I feel like it sort of does sit the idea of justice not only within somebody facing the consequences for their actions, not only for, wrongs being righted, but it kind of also, from my money, did suggest a sense of justice from like a personal perspective, that there's like, even if we're never held to account in a sort of public setting for whatever our actions may be, I feel like there's a sense of internal justice that kind of ends up
Mm,
playing out, which is a little
right.
bit of what this movie touches on. Like we do actually feel the consequence of wrongs, or sort of wrongs being righted as well in our own selves. And I feel like that's where this movie answers some of its questions about justice, because you can see the character, like as you say, the killer doesn't want there to be a sense of justice, because that would mean so much for him and all of the things
Right.
that he's doing, and it would have to
Exactly.
mean that there was a more human connection to all of these actions that he was doing, all of these assignments that he was given. If justice doesn't exist, that makes it all very easy. But I think you do see him realize over the course of this movie that even though he's chosen to believe that, it's not necessarily true, and
Right.
so he kind of has to grapple with that a little bit.
His morality is actually challenged because at the beginning he just comes off this cold, calculated, methodical killer, in a way. And it was fascinating as he kind of went through and kind of showed how he was able to do that, he was even able to kind of just can even handle the boredom that was going on
Yeah.
of just sitting there watching and waiting for his mark to show up.
Mm.
But then for it to then flip on its ear, in the sense that we're all of a sudden going, oh, but you want justice. You want
Yeah.
justice in your own life, and
Yeah.
you desire that. And I think that that's what I really found was compelling about this story, was that what he was trying to show, that there was no justice in the world, what actually went straight up against that, when it
Mm.
hit straight to his heart, which is what I think you were saying. But also I think that's what we have, even from a biblical standpoint. You can actually go to the fact that there is a God of justice, and who actually
Mm.
really sets the standard that is justice, that it's not necessarily even we that are setting the standard. I'm actually thankful that I'm not able to set the standard, because some days you don't
Mm.
necessarily want to see justice happening when you want something else to happen the way you want it to. But yet thankfully there is a standard bearer for justice, and justice does exist, even though sometimes we don't necessarily see it in this very
Mm.
difficult world that we kind of live in.
And you do bring up an interesting point about our motivations or our desire for justice, but only in certain situations. Like in the context of the killer, it is when it's flipped that he starts to care about it a whole lot more. And that's probably true for us. Like we really want justice when we feel like we're the ones deserving of some kind of consequence. We're the ones deserving of that kind of outcome. But we're maybe not as conscious of it when somebody else is the person who needs justice.
Exactly.
Like how willing are we to fight for justice on somebody else's behalf was something that I think is a really good takeaway from this movie as well.
So, but anyway, we come to the end of the watch list. Thanks so much for being a part of the whole discussion. We thank you to all of our friends out there who are kind of still having those conversations even during the week. Make sure you're subscribing to the podcast, as well as the other podcasts here at Hope 103.2. And also make sure you check out our reviews at Hope 103.2 and realdialogue.com. So thanks again for being a part of the watch list. Until next time, grab your seat, grab some popcorn, get out to see the movies, and we'll see you next time on the watch list.